Yoshi's Story was not well received when it released. Many reviews at the time rated it a lot lower than you'd normally see for a Nintendo game, especially for something directly grouped with the Mario series. Compared to Yoshi's Island, which released to overwhelmingly positive reviews, this one was just subject to mean comments from critics, and from what I personally remember, was badmouthed by all the epic gamerlings in my early days. It's a shame, honestly. I'm one of the weirdos who actually prefers Yoshi's Story to Yoshi's Island. Not going to detail why in this video, but I do think it's a ton of fun and definitely didn't deserve the less than stellar reputation when it premiered. In more recent times, I've seen a lot more appreciation for the game's aesthetics, as well as a strong speedrunning community, but it still does seem to be left in the dust compared to other first-party Nintendo 64 titles. Regardless of reception, it's a game with great Nintendo polish and detail, and this naturally is going to come with a lot of factoids surrounding it. Now, if this is your first time seeing an Iceberg video, I'm going to give a quick rundown. It's a pretty simple setup. An iceberg is a ton of factoonies surrounding a topic, with the tip of the iceberg generally being surface level knowledge, and things gradually getting more obscure and spookier the deeper we go. And with that, let's crack this book open and read between the lines of Yoshi's Story. Tier 1. Treasure Hunt. Black and white Yoshis. In the stages Bone Dragon Pit and Torrential Maze, you can find a black Yoshi egg and a white Yoshi egg in the stages Tall Tower and Poochie and Nippy. There's huge benefits to picking these guys over the normal Yoshis, as chili peppers and icky enemies heal them, at full health their egg explosions are more powerful, and when super happy they can flutter jump further. If you beat the game with them in your party, they'll return in your next playthrough, making it sort of a new Game Plus feature. Smash Bros. Appearances. Ever since the premiere Super Smash Bros. Title, Yoshi's Story has had frequent representation throughout the series. Super Smash Bros. Gave us a stage with the storybook as a central platform and the Super Happy Tree center stage. Melee also gave us a new Yoshi's Story stage, complete with Pac-E-Derm in the background and flying Shy Guys carrying food. Being the title that introduced trophies, we also got trophies for these characters. Super Smash Bros. Brawl gave us 6 stickers which used the Yoshi's Story renders. Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U gave us the only appearance of a black Yoshi costume, to be replaced by the Crafted World costume in Smash Ultimate. It sucks because that one's kinda gross, I don't really like it, he looks like he's moldy. And finally, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate gave us a whole 4 spirits that represent Yoshi's Story. Loves Me? Loves Me is one of Yoshi's default minigames in Super Mario 64 DS. Play it and pluck a flower's petals if you want to find out if your crush loves you, or if they really don't love you. It's listed under this iceberg because the graphics used for this minigame are the same ones used for the smile meter in Yoshi's Story. This simple minigame has some neat Easter eggs that'll show up if you play it enough, and appears once again in New Super Mario Bros. Selection of minigames. Fields in Mario Baseball Series. In Mario Superstar Baseball, Yoshi Park is a selectable field, notably featuring the Super Happy Tree. I guess Mario put a budget on this field's construction, as most items here were made using cardboard. A field of the same name appears in Mario Super Sluggers, although this time lacking the Yoshi Story aesthetic, redesigning it as a theme park. It does give us a majestic cover of the Yoshi Story theme, however. Yoshi's Fruit Cart. In Nintendo Land, there's a Yoshi Story themed attraction where you must draw a path for your Yoshi cart to collect all fruit before reaching the level exit. But there's a twist. The fruit will appear on the TV, but not the Wii U gamepad where the path is drawn. This minigame even gives us new fruit to add to the complex Yoshi Story lore. Totaka's Song. Totaka's Song is a track snuck into most titles composed by Kazumi Totaka, usually only heard through specific conditions. Yoshi's Story will play if you wait on both the Select Yoshi and Trial Mode screens for 2 minutes and 10 seconds. Bubbles can be destroyed from enough bumps. Found a bubble you need to burst open but lacking on the egg department? Worry not, if you bump into a bubble 15 to 30 times, it'll pop and give you whatever item rests inside. WarioWare Get It Together microgame. WarioWare Get It Together features a Yoshi Story microgame of which the goal is to collect all eggs present on the screen. Which is exactly how you finish a stage in Yoshi's Story. Tier 2. Jelly Pipe. Yoshi Topsy Turvy is the sequel. Yoshi Topsy Turvy, Given the superior title, Yoshi's Universal Gravitation in European regions was one of 2 titles released on the Game Boy Advance to use a tilt sensor, along with WarioWare Twisted. It was met with mediocre reviews and is definitely one of the less popular Yoshi titles, and rightfully so. Some elements are pretty lower quality compared to other Yoshi titles. The game's premise involves Yoshi's Island being trapped in a pop-up book, and also uses pre-rendered sprites, as well as a less good-looking version of the Smile Meter. Not officially confirmed to be a sequel. In fact, the promo art aims for Yoshi's Island art style, but wiki articles like backing me up and implying that it's a sequel, so that's good enough for me. Totaka is the voice of Yoshi. Previously mentioned Yoshi story composer Totaka also provided the voices of the Yoshis in this game, a voice that remains Yoshi's voice to this day. The Yoshi story voice clips were recycled from most of his appearances since then, up until new Yoshi voice clips were recorded for Super Mario Galaxy 2, or at least that's what sources generally claim. I vividly remember Mario Strikers and Mario Kart Wii both given Yoshi's new voice clips before Mario Galaxy 2's launch, so I don't know. Yoshi's Island Zone. Sonic Lost World for the Wii U had 2 exclusive DLC stages, The Legend of Zelda Zone and Yoshi's Island Zone. The latter rocked a very nice looking HD Yoshi story aesthetic, while also blending in some Yoshi's Island sound design and collectibles. The stage is also in the Steam re-releases files and can be modded back into the game, so worry not about the DLC's preservation, at least for now. Randall is the nickname given to the moving cloud platform present in the Yoshi story stage of Super Smash Bros. Melee. Originally named by Canadian Smash player FastFox, Randall has a pleasant reputation for last-minute rescuing players from a timely KO. Its movement is consistent and predictable, and can potentially be used strategically for recovery. IQ release. In June of 2000, old people worries about video games decided to take a turn for the worse in China, with the state council passing a bill putting a ban on video game consoles and video games. There were loopholes for the rule, as the PS2 managed to sneak its way into the market for a second by advertising itself as a computer entertainment system, being careful not to mention video games. They weren't stealthy enough and got the boot after a pretty short-lived life. However, around the same time, the IQ player was released, under its own loophole. For whatever reason, plug-and-play consoles didn't fall under the video game console ban, and Nintendo released its own variant of the N64, which featured everything packed onto a controller, with its own unique cartridges to pop in. Of the 14 games released for the not console, Yoshi's Story was one of them. It even comes with its own IQ logo at the beginning instead of the Nintendo logo. I love little things like that. The awkwardly shaped music CD. In 1997, Yoshi's Story game soundtrack, Music to Ground Pound 2, was released in North America. It was notable for having an unusual CD shape. Instead of the standard circle shape that like most CDs have, it was cut in the shape of Yoshi's head, and the fruit behind him. Apparently this made it impossible to play on many CD players and drives, some even reportedly being damaged by them. Diddy Kong Racing had a similar CD release, this time with Diddy Kong's head. Rail Lift is the dream long jump in Mario and Sonic at the London 2012 Olympic Games. In addition to having your standard Olympic sports, the Mario and Sonic series likes to include dream events, quirkier, more fantasy versions of each title's sports. In the London 2012 title, Dream Long Jump is met with a strong Yoshi's Story aesthetic, even going far enough to have flutter jumping be a mechanic. Clever. It's likely inspired by the Yoshi's Story distance-based melon minigames, which involve flutter jumping as far as you can. Wario, Zelda, and Pikachu cameos. The stage's Jelly Pipe and Torrential Maze rock some unique textures using newspaper scraps. Among these you can find Wario, Zelda, and Pikachu listed among the many words present in these. Mario, Luigi, and Nintendo 64 as well, but those aren't really as interesting. Interestingly, Dan Salvato has pointed out on Twitter that Pokemon wouldn't be released in America for another 6 months, and this could be the very first official mention of Pikachu in North American regions. Tier 3. Frustration. Loves Me is multiplayer exclusive in New Super Mario Bros. The aforementioned minigame returns in New Super Mario Bros., much like most of Super Mario 64 DS's minigames. However, Loves Me becomes multiplayer exclusive, becoming more strategic to how many petals you pluck at a time and planning your outcome on whether or not you will be loved today. Game Boy Advance Tech Demo. Being supplied only with Game Boy Advance development kits, a Yoshi game that seems to serve as a tech demo for just how much the Game Boy Advance could handle. It uses graphics and some mechanics straight out of Yoshi's Story, although features some new obstacles that weren't in Yoshi's Story, such as balloons and toady enemies. And blue shoes for Yoshi. I actually decided to check the demo out while I was making this video, and it's honestly crazy impressive. Besides the obvious incomplete animations and MIDI sounding music, it legitimately did feel like Yoshi's Story was running on the Game Boy Advance. US and Australian cartridge differences. The US release of Yoshi's Story decided to pull away from giving us the usual green Yoshi on the front, and instead features an adorable little pink Yoshi. However, I guess Australia found this to be scary or something because its cartridge uses the same art, but with the green Yoshi's colors. While on the talk of cartridge differences, shout out to the Japanese version. Its cartridge and box are peak presentation for the game in my opinion. Differences between Japanese and US versions. The game's international release was hit with some delays after it released in Japan, as some reviews were knocking it for being a little too easy. With some extra time to work on things, some updates came to the game, although funny enough didn't seem to do much if anything with making the game more challenging. The Japanese logo to Yoshi's Story has a much stronger focus on the rainbow color palette. Story mode was originally a thing you had to play through in one sitting, as it wasn't until the US release that saving between stages was added. Also added are coin formations that appear whenever Yoshi eats a heart fruit. What do they mean? Stay tuned, it'll come up later in the Iceberg. The US got some really nice little white fences too. Other changes tend to be a lot more tinier of features. Check out the cutting room floor if you want a full list. Originally a 64DD game. The Nintendo 64 Dynamic Drive was an add-on for the Nintendo 64, infamously a commercial failure. During development, it had many planned titles, a huge chunk which were retooled for the standard N64 after the flop. Among these was, of course, Yoshi's Story. Christmas wallpaper. To capture the holiday spirit in 2002, Nintendo released this precious Yoshi's Story wallpaper. Notably, a shine sprite was used as the Christmas tree topper. What is this, a crossover episode? Nintendo Gateway System. If you've visited a hotel or taken airlines in the 90s to early 2000s, you may remember this system. Technically the internals of several game consoles in a separate room, hotels and airlines would essentially use this service to rent games to you, streaming through phone lines. Games worked on single player mode only, and of course, Yoshi's Story was one available title through the system. Yoshi's Island 64. In reveal, the 64DD title was titled Yoshi's Island 64, implying that the title was originally intended to be more of a direct sequel to Yoshi's Island. Early screenshots show what seems to be smiley flowers present in the game, further supporting this. Alternate level ending when you eat 30 fruit. An update added in the US release. If you can finish a level by eating 30 melons, it will display a melon at the ending animation as opposed to the original heart graphic. Same result can be achieved with other fruit, which is usually only possible through strategic use of eating a heart fruit and ground pounding near groups of enemies. Tier 4. Piranha Grove. Anti-piracy measures. If the game detects that you're playing a bootleg copy, fruit and other objects will not spawn, making levels impossible to complete. L plus Z plus A plus B to die. Pressing this combination of buttons will instantly end your Yoshi. My best guess is that it's in the game in case of soft locks. Potentially it could be a leftover button combo used for game testing too, I guess. You are Yoshi's great partner. The US version of Yoshi's Story added secret coin formations triggered when a heart fruit is eaten, each spelling out a different letter. If you've pieced them all together, they spell out, "You are Yoshi's great partner." Yes, I am. Super Nintendo World Remix. Yoshi's Adventure is the Yoshi-themed ride located at Super Nintendo World, in which you join Yoshi on his quest to find Captain Toad. While the ride mostly rocks Yoshi's Island and Super Mario aesthetics, as well as newer Super Mario Bros. Aesthetics, it does also feature an exclusive cover of the Yoshi's Story theme. Unfortunately, as of now, it doesn't appear that an official release of the theme park soundtrack has yet been released. Big Shy Guys. Beta footage of Yoshi's Island 64 features big boy Shy Guys, with some pretty impressive visuals, honestly. Interestingly enough, they do return in the previously mentioned Yoshi's Story GBA tech demo, even having added a mechanic of shrinking to a normal-sized Shy Guy when jumped on. Different sounds and voices in Japanese commercial. The majestic Japanese commercial for Yoshi's Story seems to use footage from an earlier build of Yoshi's Story, featuring an even higher voice for Yoshi and some different sound effects than we're used to.
64だからできたこの優しさこのぬくもり
This all could be dubbed and edited in for the commercial, or it could be the sound design from an earlier build. Currently no way to check since the beta footage doesn't feature any actual audio. Yoshi Story Horoscopes. The German Club Nintendo magazine had an issue in 1998 which featured the Yoshi Story Horoscope section, which used edited Yoshi Story artwork. The Super Mario Broth post that shines some light on it cites it as issue 1 of 1998, which is definitely different than Nintendo Power just numbering each issue in order. I was able to find a couple of 1998 issues, but the uploads under Internet Archive seem to be missing some pages, and none of the issues I flipped through had it included. Super Mario Broth knows their stuff though, and I do trust it to have originated from said magazine. Beta Bone Dragon. Beta footage of the game shows an earlier design of the Bone Dragon, in which it has skin in addition to bones. Ooh, spooky. Yoshi's Story website. Being a good old 90s game, Yoshi's Story had a website used to promote the game. While it's no longer active, the Wayback Machine fortunately still has it archived. Check it out if you're a big Yoshi Story fanatic. It has really cute UI coupled with that simplistic charm that earlier websites used to have. Tier 5. Lots of jellyfish. Brown and purple Yoshis. Early footage of the game shows a brown and purple Yoshi each being planned playable. They even feature a cameo in the final game's intro, although the brown one could be better described as Orange IMO. Kiss. German Club Nintendo were some pretty PogChamp gamers for once giving us some adorable Yoshi Story comics, which is something that'll be the source of a few lower Iceberg entries. The comics actually feature their own premise instead of just following the source game's plot. Starting off with a plot about Baby Bowser, and now Kamek 2 stealing the colors of Yoshi's Island to decorate Bowser's castle with. This plot, of course, goes exactly where you expect it to, with the Yoshis getting booked on a talk show and then performing an open-air concert to restore the environment. Featured in the audience of their Happy Happening concert is famous hard rock band Kiss, meaning that these guys are canon to the Yoshi Story universe. Just ignore the fact that most Club Nintendo comics like to randomly make pop culture references. Also, the peeps in front of them are probably from some musical group too, but I'm not cultured enough to recognize them. Black Yoshi originates from Super Mario, Mario in Wonderland. The Club Nintendo comic features a second story in which our colorful Yoshis meet the Black Yoshi. At first they think he's been soiled by an oil spill and try washing him off, which turns out to be poor judgment on their end. Black Yoshi explains his coloring to them, citing back to the 1993 Club Nintendo comic, Super Mario, Mario in Wonderland. The comic is an obvious theming around Alice in Wonderland in which Mario finds his way to Wonderland, making friends with Toad, Kirby, and Yoshi on the way. Actually carrying more of Wizard of Oz parallels, they meet a wizard named Crab at the end, who I'm sure is a celebrity parody, but I simply do not recognize. Anyway, this funny, wacky wizard grants wishes in the silliest and most skewered of ways, such as turning Kirby, who wishes to look more like Mega Man, into a toaster. The green Yoshi featured in this comic has issue with being green and wishes for a new appearance. Giving him a zap of his wand, Crab chars Yoshi, turning him cartoonishly ashy. Which I guess means the Yoshis weren't wrong in assuming he's dirty, or I guess they were wrong, since the Yoshi Story comic seems to imply that he did have a full palette swap, along with fresh new lore telling us that Crab is in reality a penguin breeder from Denmark. Shawnee McClane. This same Yoshi story starts with people at the beach mistaking the Black Yoshi for a shark, causing mass hysteria. Amongst the panic, green and yellow Yoshi need rescuing by who else but the sexy lifeguard, Shawnee McClane from Baywatch. In spirit of the show, the Yoshis find her to be pretty. At least I think that's in spirit from what I've read on her wiki article. I've never actually watched the show. She's also judgy towards the Yoshis for having big noses. Mean. McDonald's Mario Challenge toy. For the month of September in 2006, McDonald's Happy Meals were themed with Take the Mario Challenge, encouraging their fatty food customers to be physically active, as encouraged by a video game character. Quite silly, I say. Of the 6 promotional toys, the relevant one here is the Yoshi Tag and Run meter, a little figure of Yoshi which you clip to your hand to really spice up a game of tag. Tagging someone with Yoshi's saddle plays, in Mario Wiki's exact description, an A major version of Alpina Blue. Yay, physical fitness. Black and white Yoshis in Yoshi's Island. One overshadowed discovery from the 2020 Nintendo Giga Leak was the discovery of black and white Yoshis in a prototype build of Yoshi's Island. In the end, pink and light blue Yoshi were prioritized, but we would later see these Yoshi homies premiere in Yoshi's Story. Koopa Kid / Baby Bowser model. Mario Party 3 features a less commonly used render of Koopa Kid, known as Baby Bowser at the time, which upon analysis seems to be the same render that was used for Baby Bowser sprites in Yoshi's Story, but with added horns. Makes sense to do this, since Nintendo seems to like to have some consistency between infant Bowser and other young portrayals of his species. Jungle Hut Spider's Easter Egg. Notably, the only Did You Know Gaming fact I could find on Yoshi's Story, the game's Jungle Hut stage has a neat Easter egg that a lot of players are likely to miss. Hitting the spiders dormant in one specific hut activates a trigger to certain instruments in the background music. You can mix and match to get your perfect jam. The Lost Page. Within the game's files are an unused song, dubbed The Lost Page by fans, which, judging by the song's tone, was likely to be used for a level select page. Smash Ultimate gave us Yoshi's Story HD renders. Promotional renders within the Mario series tend to have a little bit of a reputation for having many rarely used renders not released to the public, and in Yoshi's Story case, many which were only released in a lower resolution were ever used. Fortunately, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate came to the rescue by giving us HD renders of the Super Happy Tree, Packy Derm, Blarg, and Don Bongo. Tier 6. Ghost Castle. Black Yoshi has faced discrimination. We've gone over the Black Yoshi's backstory that the comics covered. However, what's gone unmentioned is that after the Yoshis learn of his real color, they're immediately revolted by him, accuse him of eating babies, and tell him that he should make black friends. Yeah, not cool, little dudes. He stands there in absolute sadness for the rest of the day, later rescuing them from an ambush by Kamek and Baby Bowser. As the Yoshis begin to bond with their new Black Yoshi friend, he tells them that he's met many ignorant people over the years and is used to life as a Black Yoshi. Over the years, he's been excluded from clubs, had his colors insulted by Southerners, and was almost served as a meal by a crazy chef. The other Yoshis empathize with him, noting discriminatory struggles of their own. For example, life is hard for Red Yoshi because people think he's a fireman. That's rough, buddy. The Yoshis are strictly non-smokers. When the Yoshis make peace with the Black Yoshi, they choose to live healthy and enjoy some juice. Why is this? Because the Yoshis are strictly non-smokers. I'm really proud of these babies. Future Funk. For whatever reason, Future Funk songs love to sample Yoshi sounds, always a set of voice clips which we know from Yoshi's Story. Two examples off the top of my head are Fun Tonight by Macross8299 and I Remember Those Days by Ikyoto. Also recommend jamming out to Yoshi's Dinosaur Hunt Papa Skunk remix, which isn't Future Funk, but it is a crazy IDM jam, and it's just a really good song to light up to. Yoshi Web Pets. If you've done some digging on the Yoshi Story website, it's got three main sections. The Big Story, which tells you information about the game, Player's Guide, which leads to information on how and why to buy the official Player's Guide, and finally, Yoshi the Web Pet. On this page, we can register a user ID with Insider, which is required to select and nurture your very own Yoshi Web Pet. Now, trying to find anything about Yoshi Web Pets on wikis brought up nothing, and it seems like very little has been documented about them. I was able to find some posts on Reddit where people described it as a virtual pet game in which you must regularly feed and check on your Yoshi. There is fortunately a fan-made site which has given us a few glimpses into how these little dudes worked, looking like they had moods to maintain and had that 90s craze of rockin' animated GIFs. There's no reports on what would happen if you neglected your Yoshi, but if I were to estimate from what's shown on this website, I'd assume they get taken away by a toady. Oh noes! If anyone watching this happens to have some Yoshi Web Pets memories, don't hesitate to share any kind of description. I'd totes love to see more documentation covered on this topic. Lizard Lick pre-release promotion. On March 7th, 1998, the interestingly named town of Lizard Lick, North Carolina, was given the honor of hosting a promotional event for Yoshi's Story. The event gave the city an early release of the game by an entire 2 days. as well as having some tongue-themed competitions. Said tongue competitions consisted of longest tongue, weirdest tongue, who can read the best tongue twister, and who can get the most fruit in Yoshi's story. The 5 first prize winners, which confuses me a little bit because there's only 4 competitions, won an N64 alongside a copy of Yoshi's story, and runner-ups each received a Game Boy Pocket. Now, neither of the 2 websites that reported on the events have any photos or video, which is unfortunate. If anyone has any pictures or memories of the event, you should totally get that info spreading. I'm sure spots like Mario Wiki would love some new info on the event. According to North Carolina news sources, the event was planned to kick off with a local hollerin' contest champ performing a lizard's mating call. Again, if there's any video footage of the event, please upload it. This event just sounds like one of the greatest events in human history. IGN also says that Leonardo DiCaprio was unable to make an appearance here, which sucks. Last note, IGN article described Yoshi as a green monster, and yeah, I guess. Fruit by the foot. In early 1999, Nintendo and General Mills teamed up to bring us promotional Fruit by the Foot, of which come with crazy helpful tips for N64 games. The 3 titles selected for this promotion consisted of Mario Kart 64, Banjo-Kazooie, and Yoshi's Story. I suppose the tips on these qualify as lost media, as the only scan of these wrappers that I could find were for Banjo-Kazooie.
Damn!
Yellow Yoshi has attended Woodstock. The Club Nintendo Yoshi Story comic concludes with the Song of the Yoshis, where we get to learn about the different hobbies behind our Yoshi Story protagonists. Green Yoshi rides a motorcycle and is openly against wearing a helmet apparently. Red Yoshi also ignores helmet safety when he skateboards, and is determined to ride his board to hell and back. And Yellow Yoshi has attended Woodstock. He's even got his own little hippie outfit. So cute of him. Legit does make sense though, with Yoshi's Story constant themes of love and peace and all that. I just hope Yoshi didn't eat the brown banana, oh no. If a Yoshi is unhappy, it will die. This one's pretty self-explanatory if you're familiar with the game's terminology. The game's health is referred to as the smile meter, and practice mode further explains that it represents Yoshi's mood, with yummy food giving more smile and yucky fruits souring its mood. Putting it all together, when your Yoshi dies, it's a result of it running out of happiness. I mean, if spinning around and laying down counts as dying, and assuming the white Shy Guy can resurrect the dead, I don't know, given that a Yoshi's paralyzed once it's unhappy, I'd assume it's fair to assume that it's eventually gonna die from malnourishment or something. Yoshi. Yo, for real? Thank you for watching this titan of a video about a game for babies till the very end. It was fun to make, and I loved using this all as an excuse to dump tons of crazy Yoshi story facts into one place. Probably gonna use this channel to further upload some wacko Iceberg videos covering icebergs made by friends, so stick around if you're interested in seeing those. Show the world how much you love Yoshi by doing what you can to make the world a better place. Peace, love, and happiness.